Welcome to this Facebook Live where I'm going to be talking about MECFS, healing pain and neuroplasticity. So this is going to be part 2 of a video. In the first part I talked about healing pain. I gave an overview of the different types of pain, how the brain processes pain, and an overview of solutions. So do check that video out, which is on my Facebook page and also on my YouTube channel. So in part 2, what we're going to be looking at is neuroplasticity and exploring what it is and what are the applications of neuroplasticity in terms of pain. So if you're watching live, just comment in the chat. If you're watching the replay, just put hashtag replay so I know, and do feel free to let me know if you've got any questions, tag me and I will do my best to answer them. So let's talk about neuroplasticity. What is it? It is the ability of the brain to grow with use. Scientists used to think that the adult brain doesn't change. However, there was evidence that challenged that view. I have made a video about neuroplasticity and it being the key to healing. Again, that's on my Facebook page, MECFS Explored. It's also on my YouTube channel. So check that out because I go into a bit more depth about explaining what neuroplasticity is. But in brief, there was a seminal piece of research that Eleanor Maguire from University College London did, and she studied black cab drivers. And what she found was that when they were learning the knowledge, they have to memorize 25,000 streets. She found that parts of their brain were more developed. Okay, the hippocampus, which is responsible for spatial awareness and memory, was more developed than other people. So some key concepts of neuroplasticity. The first concept is whatever we practice, we get good at. So if we practice things that are useful, maybe you're learning a language, you're learning to play an instrument, the more you practice, the better you get at it. You know, I play guitar. I now don't have to think about where to put my fingers to play the chord of C. They just automatically go to that place, automatically change to play chord of A minor or G. Okay. But the principle applies to things that are not useful. We can get really good at things that are not very helpful. So even prior to having MECFS, I was very good at generating anxiety. I was pretty good at burning the candle both ends. I was good at being a people pleaser. Okay, so that's the first concept. What we practice, we get good at. Second concept, neurons that fire together, wire together. So for instance, if someone is experiencing a certain stimulus, then how they respond can become automated, okay, can become an automatic response. So for example, let's say someone is experiencing a sensation in their body. So we'll call pain a sensation, all right, because that's more neutral. And if their response to that sensation is to generate stress and unhappiness, then these things connect. In fact, let's be a bit more accurate. So there's a neuron here and a neuron here. And if we keep practicing this pathway, okay, then a couple of things happen. These neurons move closer together. They get thicker, okay, and therefore the signal travels along this pathway more quickly. Okay. Now, if someone practices responding to that sensation in a more calm way, then that takes conscious effort because it's really easy at this point for that signal to travel down this pathway. Okay, it's really easy to go down this pathway because it's strong. It's like a big main road. Okay, whereas this pathway here, the neurons aren't very well developed. They're not necessarily very close together. They're not close together, and so it takes a bit more effort. But if we keep practicing, then this pathway gets thicker. They start to move more closer together, and this pathway starts being reduced, okay? This pathway starts to shrink, okay? And then it keeps shrinking, and if we stop using it, then it can disappear altogether, okay? But it does keep shrinking, and then this pathway becomes the default pathway, okay? So neurons fire together, wire together. So they don't necessarily wire together, but they move more closely together. And so it's easier for the signal to travel down this pathway, okay? So next principle, neurons compete for space. So if we're doing all that more helpful stuff rather than the unhelpful stuff, then, as I say, this wiring can start to take over in the brain. It's a bit like Monopoly. You know, if someone buys lots of houses, they kind of start to dominate the game, okay? So neurons compete for space. Whatever we practice, we get good at. So if someone is practicing stress, then the calm shrinks. The space in the brain which generates calm starts to get smaller. If they practice meditation and other calming strategies, then the wiring starts to take up more of the brain, okay? And the fourth principle is that the brain changes most when we're doing something novel. So that's why it's kind of important to keep things fresh. If you're using particular techniques, finding ways of keeping your approach fresh so that you don't just kind of do things in a robotic manner, okay? A few key things about the brain. The first thing is that the brain evaluates the information it gets. So for instance, if we get some sensation in our leg, that signal travels up the nerves to the spinal cord, up into the brain. The brain processes that information. I talk about that in the part 1, so do watch that video. There's an interesting TED talk that I refer to where Australian chap was walking in the outback and he felt this sensation in his leg, thought it was probably just a twig. It turned out to be a very poisonous snake. So watch that video because it'll help make sense of what I'm talking about here. So the brain evaluates the information. Well, we need to understand that pain is important. It can keep us safe. So for instance, if you cut yourself and you're bleeding a lot, then the message you get of pain is going to help you take appropriate action and keep you alive. Problem is sometimes the brain makes a mistake. So in the last video I talked about the fact that on one occasion when I was recording a hypnosis audio, I might not have explained this bit, but I got a dead leg and I was in a recording booth and recording this kind of relaxing hypnosis audio, and I'd been standing for about 45 minutes not realizing I was putting all my weight on my left leg, and I felt, oh, my left leg's a bit dead, I'll move it. But instead of moving my weight to my right leg, I tried to move my left leg, which was completely dead, and I just fell over. And the chap in the next room who was listening, he said I was falling asleep because I was so relaxed listening to you. And then I heard this thud and I thought he'd had a heart attack. So he ran to the room and I said, don't come in because I'm lying against the door and I can't move because my leg is completely dead. And I ended up being on crutches. I hobbled to the cafe, which is just around the corner, and we were just in fits of laughter because it was so funny. He nearly had a heart attack hearing the thud, and he thought I'd had a heart attack. But what happens? I get crutches because I don't want to be putting pressure on that foot because I'm experiencing pain, and that pain is my body's way of saying, stay off this ankle. You need to rest it so that it can heal. And the pain has a protective mechanism. The ankle heals. I do some exercises to strengthen my ankle and the pain goes away. But sometimes the brain makes a mistake. And I don't think pain researchers fully understand why that happens. But if you think about a smoke alarm, imagine you've burned the toast. The smoke alarm's gone off. So you open the window and throw the toast out the window, and smoke alarm is still going off because there's still smoke from the toast, but the problem, the emergency, is over. Okay, the smoke alarm's still going, so you either have to disconnect it or open the front door and get rid of the smoke, and the alarm goes off. But what happens with old pain or chronic pain is that message, like the smoke alarm, should have been switched off, but it stays switched on. Again, I talk a bit about this in part 1, so do watch that video. And I talk about a client who 20 years before we started working together, she had back pain as a result of a car accident, and she continued having that back pain for 20 years. And I taught her some techniques and she resolved her back pain. So I'll talk about that in a moment. So the second thing we need to understand about the brain is that it is a pattern recognition mechanism. It's looking for patterns. So it's asking the question, what normally happens here? So I remember having a client who said, and you can comment in the chat whether you can relate to this, she'd wake up in the morning and the first thing she would do is check her body for symptoms. And when she noticed the symptoms, she'd then feel kind of sense of despair, frustration, hopelessness, and stress. And we know that that can actually turn up the pain. Okay, so can you relate to that? That idea of kind of waking up, checking your body for symptoms, finding symptoms, and then feeling some, negative feelings. If you can relate to that, just put a yes in the chat. That is something I can relate to because that is something that I did. And the third point about the brain is that perception is a key factor. So as I describe in the first video, this chap walking in the outback has this sensation on his leg, thinks that, it's probably just a twig. And so the brain turns down the pain signal. But actually, he says, well, imagine if I went for another walk in the woods, having discovered that I was bitten by a snake, then the next time I have that sensation, the brain might say, it could be a snake, and it turns up the pain signal, okay, which is preparing that person for action, okay? So there is that filter of perception, okay? So let's talk about some strategies for dealing with pain. So I had a comment, when I collapse, I had breathlessness, dizziness. I then had pain in my back, front, chest, pins and needles. Sorry to hear that. And, I can completely understand why, in that kind of situation, you may feel alarm, okay? And of course, in those situations, it's important to try and soothe yourself as much as you can. I did a first aid course last week, and one of the things we were taught was that if you are dealing with a kind of situation where someone's had an accident, then one of your jobs is to kind of soothe them. You might say to them, look, help is on its way. I'm going to stay with you. You're okay. Okay? So Lynn says, I collapsed. Consultant looked at the echo. You'd had a heart attack at some point, and they said there was heart damage. Okay, sorry to hear that, Lynn. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies for healing pain, incorporating those concepts of neuroplasticity. So, for example, if the old response to waking up in the morning, noticing the sensations, feeling some despair, feeling some concern, feeling some anxiety, then we want to create a new response. We need to do something different. One of the key principles is do something different, okay? So I've made a video where I talked about PACT. So it's an acronym. So check out that video also on my YouTube channel. So let's imagine, so I had a client who, that's what she would do in the morning. She'd wake up, she'd notice the symptoms, generate stress, and that would kind of exacerbate her symptoms. So one of the things I got her to do is to change the conversation. So she decided to, instead of focusing on what was going on in her body, because she recognized she didn't need to, is she'd just repeat a number of power words to herself. It might be peace, calm, love, trust, energy, pragmatism, wisdom. So she'd just say all these words and it would just like flood her brain. And I have got a book, don't know whether it's whether it's around, which is full of positive words. And actually it's really interesting when you look at it, because people often have a very developed vocabulary for words that aren't very helpful. But they, sometimes I say to people, when people say to me, oh, I didn't feel anxious, and I say, what did you feel? And they have to really think about it. And they haven't got the vocabulary for those kind of more positive words, okay? So that's what one client did. Another client decided first thing in the morning, she would just listen to some uplifting music, okay? And another client decided to get up and just do a little dance in front of the mirror and say to herself, you can do it, you can do it. She would just say all these kind of positive things. And it got her into a lighter state, okay? Obviously, you have to use your judgment about what you can and can't do, all right? So with my client who had pain as a result of a car accident, remember what we said, perception is a factor, and it influences what signals the brain produces. If the brain thinks this is danger, then it will produce pain signals. Okay, so she recognized her old response was tension when she noticed the pain. She'd have some emotional responses of frustration. And what I taught her to do is to actually have some new responses, to break that pattern, to access the parasympathetic state, to have different conversations in her head. This is a false alarm, I am safe. And she would spend time calming her physiology. And she resolved 20 years of back issues as a result of that car accident. And what was interesting is that I've had a couple of clients, 2 or 3 clients, and their husband was a doctor. So actually the training was very interesting to them because they recognised that these were tools that they hadn't learned. Vicky says, I'd love the name of that book when you happen across it. Okay, I will have a quick look, remind me, because I was tidying up and it might be close at hand. I'll have a little look, but I will find that for you, Vicky. It's a small little book, but it's a very clever little book. So we want to have new responses, okay, instead of those old responses of really focusing on the symptom, catastrophizing, generating anxiety. So that's strategy number 1, okay, do something different. Strategy number 2, I call turn it up, turn it down. So one strategy, if we understand that pain is registered in the brain, okay, the kind of parts of the brain that process pain, imagine you've got a little part of the brain that is activating pain response. And imagine you can just turn up that pain just a little bit and then turn it down. And turn it down a little bit more so it's less than what it is or what it was. Okay, so you're just imagining turning it up a little and then turning it down. Okay, some people prefer to just focus on turning it down. Some people may be familiar with a comic called the Beano, and I think in that comic there was a comic strip called the Numbskulls, which were these little people inside our bodies. And so some people imagine that there's these little people in their brain turning a lever down, turning that sensation down. Okay, so we can be creative, we can be playful, we can kind of gamify our approach. That means turn it into a game. There's a visualization that actually I've created a relaxation audio where people get into a tropical pool and have this water pouring over them, relaxing their body, helping their body relax and let go. And that can be a nice way of visualizing to soothe our body. But as I say, you might use that kind of numbskulls idea. Imagine them kind of sending soothing, cooling liquids throughout the body to just cool things down. Okay, so you can use your imagination. And the third strategy that I share, I've actually kind of created a list of about 10 strategies which I'm going to be putting in my membership site for people doing my building resilience training. So these are just 3 of them. But the third one is to connect to the present through your senses. So through sight, it might be just walking in nature and really just connecting, being present, putting your attention on nature, what you can see. Or you might, if you've got a pet, just stroking your pet. So the sensation of touch, using the sense of sound. So if you are walking in the woods or whatever, just really listening to the birds, listening to the sounds, putting your attention there. I think I talked about this in the last video, that Aborigines, if they were experiencing uncomfortable sensations in their body, they'd focus on a different part of the body. Okay, so in terms of touch, you might, give yourself a massage different parts of your body. Just experiment, see what works for you. Relaxing your body. I've shared this kind of tapping technique where you tap the outside of your body and the inside up your arm, your whole body, your head, your legs outside, down the outside of the leg, up the inside of the leg. So it's just creating connection with your body. Okay, you might put your hands under running water if it's hot, nice cold water. If it's cold, just nice hot water, just enjoying that sensation, really enjoying the sensation of having a shower. Okay, Peter Levine, who does kind of trauma work, talks about shaking, and that's what animals do after they experience, a kind of fight-flight situation, and when they get away, they shake it out. Okay, they stretch, they tremble, and it's a way of discharging some of that emotion. We might use the sense of smell. Some people find lavender really relaxing. Sometimes I pop it on my pillow, it helps me sleep. Or you might focus on taste and really, just have a piece of, for me it's dark chocolate, and if I'm eating it, I'll really focus my attention on the taste and enjoyment of it. Okay, and if you've got a human who you can connect to, you can incorporate some or all of those senses depending on the nature of your relationship. So see, hear, touch, smell, etc. Okay, so they're just 3 little strategies that you can practice. If you like to kind of go deeper into that, I am going to be starting a building resilience group training next week. It's a 12-week program. There are still some places left with some insane bonuses, including I've thrown in 3 hours of coaching for the first few people. So if you're interested to know more, leave a comment, get in touch, I'll send you details. So let's see, any other comments? I did that the other day, and today Qigong, it was good, and hugging myself the other day, fantastic. So all of these things, really simple things, if you Google it, you will find many strategies for kind of getting into a relaxed state, improving your vagal tone. Okay, so you can Google that and just find things that work for you. Use your intuition, try different things. You know, some people really like giving themselves a hand massage or an ear massage. You know, some people find that really sensual if someone else is doing that. So if you can persuade someone to do that, or a foot massage. You know, I know when my mum's experienced pain, I've just given her a foot massage, and that has really helped. So use your creativity, all right? So let's pause there. If you've got any questions, comments, pop them in the chat. If not, we'll end with a very brief relaxation. And again, this is another strategy that you can use. What I'd like to do is, as long as it's safe for you to do so, is just close your eyes and just make yourself comfortable. Ensure that your hands and feet are in a comfortable position, and you can adjust your posture whenever you choose. And I'd like you just to focus on a part of your body that's feeling good right now. Just choose a part of the body. Sometimes people say, I can't find a part of my body that feels good. And I say, well, what about your earlobes? How are they right now? Or your eyelashes? So just choose a part of your body that's feeling good right now. And just imagine it as a colour. What colour represents those good feelings that you experience in that part of the body? Now I'd like you just to imagine turning up that colour. As you turn it up, it's just a bit brighter. And as you turn it out, it starts spreading through your body, spreading into the rest of your body, spreading into the parts that need it most. As it spreads throughout the whole of your body, helping those cells in your body relax, soften, and let go. I like to imagine that colour just gently swirling around you, enveloping you in those good feelings. So as you breathe in, breathing in that colour. As you breathe out, just allowing your mind and body and physiology to relax, soften, and let go. And you can do this exercise anytime you choose. So knowing that, you can revisit this exercise. You can rewatch this part of the video if you like. You can either carry on resting, bring yourself back now, open your eyes and come back. So if you've got any questions or comments about anything I've shared, do feel free to post a comment or get in touch. But for now, I'll say thanks for watching, wishing you great health, and bye for now.